speciation. Okay, let's start off with definition. Speciation, what is it? It's the process of forming a new species. So shun tells us it's a process. So this is evolution in action. So this generally happens when populations become reproductively isolated. That means that there's no gene flow between their populations. There's two types, and we're going to look at them separately. First of all, let's look at allopatric speciation. Certainly AQA, but I think more or less all the exam boards tend to focus on this one. This is the only one that AQA looked at. Now they're expanding their horizons to look at sympatric speciation as well. Well, the most important thing we just need to know here that the reproductive isolation that comes from allopatric speciation is because of geographical isolation. So why can't they reproduce? Why is there no gene flow between the population here? Well, let's pretend this is a mountain range or a very fast-flowing river or a deep ocean or something that is difficult to cross. You might have a population of organisms of the same species on either side. Maybe, in fact, maybe they're everywhere. And maybe over geological time, the mountain range pops up here and it's difficult or impossible for them to cross. That means this population are going to be reproductively isolated from this population and there's no gene flow. They're not shagging, basically. And that we would call, over time, environmental conditions will change. We'll put the notes here and they'll become separate species. With sympatric speciation, they're in the same place at the same time, so they're not geographically isolated, but they do become reproductively isolated. This could be for a few different reasons, which we're going to go into. The main process of speciation is going to be the same. After we get to reproductive isolation, when there's no gene flow, then the notes are going to go as follows. Okay, so starting with allopatric geographical isolation resulting in reproductive isolation, we can say no gene flow. These are all key terms that they love. And now this is going to become a common answer. So for both of these sections. So we can say variation exists in the population. We could say populations for geographical isolation because they're in two separate populations. For sympatric, it's still one population. So be a little bit careful with the S that you choose to add on the end there or not. And why does variation exist? Well, due to mutations mostly. So there are different selection pressures. Examples of that could be for, obviously, allopatric speciation. We could have different environmental conditions. Could be, we're going to look at the examples here, could be different courtship behavior. This is going to result in directional selection of different phenotypes. If you're not too sure what directional selection is, it's a selection which promotes one extreme of the phenotype, is more likely to survive and reproduce. So that's the next sentence. We can say that there's differential reproductive success. So different organisms with different phenotypes will survive and have children or offspring with different success, basically. Pretty straightforward. This causes a change in allele frequency, which, if we remember, this change in allele frequency over time is the definition of evolution, and we need to say that it happens over many generations or many years. Now, examples, probably you've all heard of the dodo. So the dodo was a pigeon that could fly, got blown off course, possibly even one pregnant female or a couple, a small flock, landed on Mauritius, and it had no predators there, didn't need to fly. Flying is very energetically expensive, so what did it do? Well, it kind of stopped flying, walked around on the ground, ate all the fruits and stuff like that. Eventually it lost its wing muscles because they were no longer being a benefit, and as a result, over many generations, became flightless. So this is how the dodo became separate to its ancestral pigeon population. Last thing we look at are the different ways that sympatric speciation can take place. So it could be morphological. This means your body shape, basically, your different shapes. So different shaped genitalia. Maybe the penis doesn't fit the vagina anymore. Not sure I've ever written the word genitalia out before. It might not be spelled correctly. This could be seasonal. So seasonal, maybe they are reproductively active at different times of the year. This is most common in plants. Not to say that it can't happen in animals, but we have things like plants that often have male reproductive parts and female reproductive parts, so they'd much rather breed sexually than with themselves. So they make the male parts of the plant sexually active at different times to the female parts of the plant, so they can't self-pollinate. This could be behavioral. Well, we've talked about courtship behavior, so different courtship behavior. So crickets is a good example there. The song that a cricket plays is going to be what makes it attractive to a mate or not. If it's playing a different tune, maybe that's only attracted to a certain type of female, and then over many generations, they become separate species. And we've also want to look at hybrid sterility. So hybrid sterility is when you have a hybrid between what we'd consider two species and they're infertile. So a mule is infertile because the female mother is a horse and has 64 chromosomes. The male father is a donkey and has 62 chromosomes, which means after all the shaking up, you get 63 chromosomes, which is an odd number. So when it undergoes meiosis, it cannot have full pairs. It doesn't have a full set of homologous pairs, and it's infertile. Okay, so what do we need to know about speciation? Two types. Allopatric, which is involved in speciation where the two populations are geographically isolated. All speciation is going to take place when populations are reproductively isolated, meaning there's no gene flow, no hubba-hubba going on between the individuals. Sympatrics is a bit like, this makes sense to me, I can't think why. Like, if something is, sim is like on top of each other. So synchronous, it has to be together. So if they're together, then they're not geographically isolated, but they are reproductively isolated. These are the mechanisms by which that can happen when they're in the same place. Different shaped genitalia, we could be different times, they become reproductively active at different times, different behavior, or possibly when they do reproduce, there are something wrong, there's something that makes the hybrid sterile. And how does it take place? Well, the process is we're either going to have geographical isolation and reproductive isolation, or we can say for sympatric speciation, all of these things apply. Variation exists in the populations because of mutations. There's different selection pressures. This could be for any of these reasons. Directional selection of different phenotypes. So this could be cricket song, different selection of different courtship behavior, differential reproductive success. Different organisms have more children depending upon their phenotype. This causes a change in allele frequency over many generations. So let's just do something like this. And that's all you need to know.